Hey Aquarius, welcome to November 2020. So I'm pulling from my affirmator's deck because it's gentle and cute, and I think we kind of need a little bit of easygoing vibes for November. And I also am pulling angels for the same reason, and I got the angel of flexibility for you. I am ready for the surprises of life. When we are in tune with our souls, we get the inspiration that will help us not to harden or crystallize in relation to our thoughts, concepts, habit patterns, or conditionings. When we are able to follow the flow of intelligent energy in the daily affairs of our lives with flexibility, we create an openness for the spirit within us to come and make our burden light. So I love that energy, and I immediately am kind of put in mind of a conversation I had with a friend yesterday where she was just talking about like feeling stuck and kind of overwhelmed, and I was thinking or sharing with her that like maybe when she was feeling stuck or uninspired, it was like to honor that, right? Like especially when she was just trying to figure out what she wanted to do, right? And she kind of like, I guess it's like to be aware of where does the mind create shoulds for ourselves that are just kind of made up, right? Like, I think, oh my god, that card has come up for everyone. Okay. I shuffled these, and some of the same cards are coming out for you and Capricorn. Okay, so I was just saying, like, I think sometimes our mind can create shoulds about our process with this flexibility, and that seems like a lot. Anything else? Okay. I'm multitasking. Oh, okay. So, our minds create conditions, expectations of ourselves, but it's like, to be really clear with us, is where is this coming from, right? Is this should a real should? Probably not. Like, I would say 90% of the time, no. I mean, the only real shoulds are like, if you're a parent and you're responsible for a kid, then yes, you should take care of your kid. Like, that's beyond that. I mean, most of the shoulds in our lives are kind of made up, especially to be careful of the self-imposed ones that aren't even coming from an external source, but are just coming from a voice or an expectation inside your head. I think to let go of that, again, to honor what is coming to you naturally. Another thing I would say on that note is, like, when do you get really excited? Like, maybe sometimes what you're doing feels like an absolute waste of time. Like, maybe, sometimes for me, even doing tarot videos on YouTube, when, like, 100 people tops watch these, one could argue that it's like a waste of time. I really, though, enjoy doing these readings because I get something out of doing it, and maybe the people, like, it doesn't matter if it's like a lot of people or not. It's like, if you're getting something out of this reading, then that's nice too. So I think what I'm trying to say is just to honor what feels like it comes naturally to you and what you're just kind of excited to show up for, and to also take off your to-do list, Page of Pentacles. Take off the things on your to-do list that aren't really absolutely, necessary if you really don't want to do it, or delegate even. I think this flexibility, and this shouldn't be too hard for you as an Aquarius, I would imagine, but like, even Aquarius is, are you a fixed sign? Maybe. Yeah, you are. So, I mean, I guess you can get a little fixed and rigid. So I think to be really open with yourself is good. Maybe we'll come back to that. Knight of Swords in reverse, Ace of Swords in reverse, Three of Swords, Nine of Wands, Temperance in reverse, Five of Swords in reverse, Five of Pentacles, and the Moon. Wow. Okay. Well, Aquarius, I'm gonna have some tea for a moment. Well, I mean, it's not like, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't pull the happiest cards in the deck, but I did pull from my gentle deck, maybe just for this reason. I would imagine that a lot of this feels self-imposed. It does seem to me like you might be putting a ton of pressure on yourself for some reason. I don't know why, but we'll dive into it. We got Three of Swords. This is heartbreak. And maybe something not so great happened. I know in my life something not so great happened pretty recently. And I think I'm, I don't know where I'm at in my own grief process necessarily, but I'm definitely showing up to my life, and still asking some questions that are tough. But I think I'm really trying for myself. I'm just speaking about myself right now. I'm really trying to find peace with having faith. But the grief process cannot be rushed. And this Three of Swords, this heartbreak, it feels like it potentially could have been recent. Or it could just be an ongoing series of just, it feels like nothing ever goes your way. And it's just like, so this could be like one big traumatic thing, or it could just be a series of ongoing losses where it just feels like you've been like on a dark night of the soul for like so long that you're like, you've given up on the idea of like redemption or like hope almost. At least that's the vibe. But I think, because we also got this Five of Pentacles here. So I do feel just kind of with your reading and what I was talking about, like flexibility, I feel like things, and if this doesn't resonate with you, I'm very happy to hear that, and you don't have to listen, so that's a good thing. Like, tarot is not an exact science. I would say it's more akin to poetry. So, you know, you do be discerning about who you listen to. Like, some tarot readers I, like, listen to would be like, I don't want to sugarcoat things. And I'd be like, what do you mean sugarcoat things? We're basically making shit up based on, like, the cards that show up. You know what I mean? And then, so it's like, I think, I am not an authority. I am not claiming that this applies or is true for everyone. And I know that what I am saying is on the heavier end of the spectrum. So I'm just clarifying that to say that the medicine of this reading, if you choose to keep listening, is that I hope to offer a light to get you through the end of the tunnel of the darkness, or to validate the darkness as a legit experience of life, so that you don't feel so alone, and so you know that, like, this is a normal part of being human. But, you know, you're on your own journey too, so you can check in with you, and if this doesn't feel right, again, don't listen. And if it does, we're not talking about your life is going to be doom and gloom forever. It just might have been heavy in a really deep way that is, like, really impacting you. And also, if we just take off all of the, like, ideas of personal trauma or ongoing trauma, just the very fact that collectively we're in a global pandemic, and a lot of us, Five of Pentacles, have been quarantined, isolated from friends, isolated from our old lives. A lot of, like, our old kind of outlets have gone and disappeared. It's been tough. I mean, it's just been a little bit challenging. So this energy here that I'm talking about, the heaviness, and, like, also just the feeling, like, to me, I'm almost getting, like, the Nine of Wands right here, right now. I'm getting a little bit of, like, Sisyphus vibes of just, like, pushing the boulder up the hill, it rolls back down, pushing the boulder up the hill, it rolls back down. Just, like, nothing I do ever feels like it's enough to get me out of this dark space. I think that is something I kind of just want to talk about for a moment, because I think it is something I've certainly been grappling and contending with, again, as I was saying. And I think it's a conversation worth having. I think I'm listening to a podcast lately called Tattoos and Torah or something. Maybe Torah and Tattoos. And there was a rabbi on it, and she was talking about how even she, with all of her seeking and looking for God and meaning and etc., sometimes gets depressed and like gets kind of like to a little bit of a place of despair. And she was like, it's kind of like moving towards a vibe of like, hello darkness, my old friend. We also got the moon, and I think it's super important to acknowledge this. But we will kind of circle back. For me, I can say that with this type of energy, this heaviness, this heartbreak, this feeling of isolation, this feeling of loneliness, this feeling of disconnection, this feeling of like, oh my God, like it just feels like it's never going to get better and nothing I do is ever enough. For me, I used to really struggle with getting to that darkness because I do try really hard, right? Like, I'm into magic to a degree. I mean, it's I'm pretty much agnostic. Like, I don't really, want to believe anything too firmly because I don't think that I can, but as the nature of existence. But, I'm always like kind of looking for ways to help myself, like meditation, yoga, not drinking alcohol, going to therapy. I'm like always trying to work on healing myself, but I still get depressed and get this 5 of Pentacles, 3 of Swords energy, and that a rabbi was talking about it too. And for me in the past, I always felt like whenever I returned to the dark place, I would get really demoralized because I was like, nothing I do is good enough. Nothing I do adds up. And that is really frustrating. Like, I've tried everything under the sun. I've read every self-help book in the world, and nothing is good enough. Like, I'm just always here in this darkness. And I think kind of maybe to me, what was healing and helpful was to acknowledge and honor that darkness, hello darkness, my old friend, as a part of life, as a part of existence, as a part of the human condition, as a part of the journey. So that it's not about escaping these kinds of energies, but about sitting with them when they arrive and knowing that it too shall pass and that then it will also come back, right? It's like that ebb and flow. It's the yin yang. It's the light and the dark. I think for me, and I mean, even thinking about the moon, night and day, right? It's not like we're in the daytime and we're like, oh, if only I can stop the sun from setting and if only I can make it day infinitely, then my life is going to be better. I mean, there are places in the world where, like, I think Alaska or something, where, like, sometimes it's day 24/7 and sometimes it's night 24/7. And that's it's hard to not have that cycle. So I think what I'm trying to speak to, Aquarius, is if you are in a little bit of a struggle bus period, just really not trying to fix it, not trying to beat yourself up, not trying to say, like, I need to do something to fix it. None of that. Just sort of being like, hello, darkness, my old friend. Hey, it's nighttime now. Hey, I'm just in one of those, like, kind of darker periods of my life. And I don't know how long it's going to last, but I do have faith that the sun will rise again, right? And it's kind of like Castaway to me, his little monologue that he gives where he was like, I had no reason to live, but, one day the tide brought in a sail, and you never know what the tide's going to bring. Like, tomorrow the sun will rise and you don't know what the tide's going to bring. And the moon also really evokes tides. And so, Aquarius, I'm just kind of trying to, I hope, provide a little bit of comfort that you're not doing anything wrong and you're probably doing everything right. And sometimes life is just hard. Sometimes tragedy just strikes, and we don't have to find the silver linings. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say things are going to change. Things are going to be different again. And this moment is changing you in some ways. We got this Temperance, and Temperance to me is alchemy, inner alchemy, finding inner balance, kind of balancing disparate elements like fire and water type of thing. I'm gonna just plug in my computer real quick. Oops. Pardon me. Just running low on some charge. So, yes, Temperance, these different elements. I do feel like whatever you're going through is probably changing you internally, and maybe that is part of the discomfort. I think with talking about this flexibility and like going back to that to-do list, maybe part of the reason why you put pressure on yourself is because it gives you a sense of control. But with these energies right here, I think what I'm trying to say about the harder moments of life is that I think they really bring into question how much control we really have, which is, I think, ultimately not a ton. I don't even know how much control we have over our own thoughts. We certainly have a will, but, willpower, to bring it back to the moon, willpower is from your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is only 10%. So it's like 10% of your mind is trying to overcome the work of like 90% of all of this stuff that is just in there in the subconscious. Moon is the subconscious mind to me as well. So it's like your will only really can do so much, not a lot, it's like kind of like, I think, to bring it back to that Nine of Wands too, it's like I just do get the sense of like pressure and like judgment of like self-judgment of like, oh, like I'm not doing something right or blah blah blah. I just really get a heavy sense of pressure that you're putting on yourself that feels kind of a little undue pressure you're putting on yourself, because I think that what this like dark night of the soul-ish type vibe situation that you're going through, it is changing you, right? Temperance in reverse, it's like you're being changed by the situation, but like maybe you just are having a hard time with that aspect of it too, because it's really bringing to light, if anything, your lack of control. And I think that's just hard for all humans, And even though you're technically an alien, Aquariuses are a little bit aliens, you are a human. And, phew. So I do think lesson number 1 from my reading is, if you're in a tough spot, don't judge yourself. It's nothing you're doing. Sometimes you're just stranded on a deserted island like Tom Hanks in Castaway, and it's not something you did. It's not your fault. It's not you being bad. It's not you being stupid. It's not you being not good enough to get off the island. There are just literally perhaps elemental forces, i.e. subconscious mind, or just external circumstances, etc., or something that was out of your control, blah, 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 or just even being in a global pandemic. Being in a global pandemic is not your fault, not something you did, not like something you can control. So I do think control issues are coming up, and I think that is where you can change your approach. And even though this is in reverse, it's still healing energy. It's still, to me, also the moon, another message of the moon, is things are not always what they seem. I mean, like, thinking about this, for example, right? Like, the moon has its own phases itself. So sometimes the moon looks like a crescent, but is the moon crescent shaped in reality? No, it's just the way the light is reflecting on the moon. And the moon is really an orb in space. But maybe from the Earth, if we weren't as sophisticated as we are, we would think that it was changing its shape, but really it's just the light. Whatever. My point is that, like, whatever you are going through is A, not your fault, B, a part of the human experience, C, going to pass. It's also kind of about, like, having patience and faith. and letting yourself be changed. Like, I mean, Tom Hanks changed on the island. He learned how to make fire. He learned how to make shelter for himself. He learned how to build a raft, you know, and he did a lot of that through trial and error. So I think that to bring it back to that flexibility in this to-do list and the lack of control too, maybe there are new ways you can approach just letting go of all this pressure you're putting on yourself, and especially on this idea maybe of willpower. Letting go of the notion of willpower, letting go of the notion of to-do lists. I don't like always listen to Abraham Hicks or like totally love Abraham Hicks, but Abraham Hicks did say one good thing to me, which was like to make a to-do list for yourself of like things that you really think you can do and get done, that you're like kind of excited to show up for, and then everything else that just feels like a sludge through or like feels overwhelming, make another to-do list for the universe and let the universe do that to-do list. Meaning, like, when you kind of release this false sense of control or your ability to, like, be on top of the world or get everything done, or, like, putting all that pressure on yourself and just kind of, like, accepting your own limitations, and then letting and having faith and trust in a process larger than your conscious mind, kind of accepting that there are these ebbs and flows, and kind of letting this, your lack of control, change how you approach your days and how you kind of move through the world. There is an opportunity for healing there. And then you also might find that some of the heavier things on that to-do list that you gave to the universe, you just like, they either get done, you know, through some other avenue, or you find yourself being able to show up to it without all of the like stress. Because a lot of the times when things are hard, it's not the work itself that's hard, it's just the pressure and the stress and like the mental blocks and like that, you know, that harshness towards ourselves. And we're really trying to move towards gentleness. We got the 5 of Swords in reverse. To me, this is the trying to win at all costs card. And really, I think there is an opportunity for you in November to let go of control, let go of, like, to surrender, just totally surrender, and let go of the need to win. And just kind of maybe look towards, just kind of sitting with where you're at now, and really, I think, taking a big pause. We also got Ace of Swords and Knight of Swords in reverse, which came up for someone else, maybe Sagittarius. But with that, I think to bring it back to the moon and the subconscious mind, it's like things might just not be what they seem. Things might not be as bad as they seem or as bad as they feel, not to invalidate your feelings, but it's like the dark moments shall pass, or you will heal from grief, or through grief, you know, not from grief, through grief. If you go through the grieving process, you will heal. You will arrive at acceptance. You are learning about, you know, your inner makeup, temperance, and I don't know where it went. Temperance in reverse. You're learning about yourself for sure. You're maybe most definitely learning new approaches that might ultimately just help you navigate life in a different way. I don't want to say better per se. I don't want to like continue to add value judgments to things. But also, maybe there's like an honoring of the mystery, right? Of this moon, of the unknown, of the subconscious mind, of kind of, again, it feels like you can ultimately, Aquarius, move towards deep acceptance. And, oh my goodness, okay. Yeah. It's like almost like you don't need to know the truth. You don't really need the answers, even though like maybe a part of you feels that way. I think that what is ultimately more important is to give it up to God or to the universe or to a higher power, kind of like in AA. I mean, whatever a higher power means to you, it could be even just asking for a little bit of help from friends, whatever feels tangible or good to you. But I think the overall takeaway for November is if things are hard, it's not your fault. I'm kind of repeating myself, but I just want to make sure I kind of got what we needed to get through. You're not doing something wrong, and you don't need to fix it. You don't need to fix the darkness. The darkness is a facet of life. The shadow is a part of life. The nighttime and daytime has a relationship, yin and yang. So when you're in those darker, depressive, tragic, heartbreak, trauma, when you're moving through grief, it's okay. It's part of the human experience. So, like, can you give yourself permission just to feel what you're feeling and to not, add additional self-judgment or stress? Can you accept your own limitations? Can you be flexible about how you approach things? Can you let this moment change you? Can you stop trying to win at all costs and kind of be a little bit more mindful of what serenity prayer, grant me what I do and do not have control over, or like the grace to know the difference, etc., right? Like finding your own answers about how you can navigate life. That's for you to decide, but I really do recommend kind of moving away from self-judgment and from kind of any additional sense of stress internally, and the to-do list thing, like giving some of it up to either actual physical other humans or just the universe to get done in another way, and kind of having faith. And again, with the moon, maybe knowing you don't really need to know the full truth, because you might not have all the information right now anyway, and the picture could change maybe very quickly into a positive. So it's just kind of sitting with where you're at and letting that moment, to the extent that you can, even if you have resistance, just kind of alchemize your approach. And I think it's really ultimately moving from a state of trying to control everything to a state of being really open and flexible with yourself, flexible with others, flexible about the story, which again, I know you're a fixed sign, but I think that this is sort of what the moment is teaching you. So that's my reading for you. A little bit of a heavier one, but it's quite all right, because again, that's part of the deal, and I'm not sugarcoating it, but maybe my readings are fake anyway. And then you again get to be flexible about what you take to heart from other strangers on the internet, which is a good lesson to learn about who you trust and what you listen to, where you're getting information, how it makes you feel when you receive information. So it's kind of a month about learning about yourself and how you operate, and especially when you operate under a little bit of stress, and maybe taking some of the stress off of yourself that the self-imposed, self-created stress that just doesn't need to be added on top of everything else. So again, that's it, and I'll see you in December. Bye.